Hi, I'm George, and welcome to GMakes, and this is my 100 subscriber special, I guess is what I'm calling it. And I just want to say thank you to all 100 plus now of you. I started this channel just a couple months ago because I had been working in Blender for a bit and wanted to experiment more, and also in After Effects, and I thought, if I'm experimenting and coming up with cool things, why not share those with other people who might have similar ideas or want to know similar concepts? So why not make tutorials? So I'm glad that you're enjoying them and liking what I'm putting out. There's still going to be a lot of that going forward. It's only going to grow and improve from here. I have ideas to take some of those beginner and those first tutorials I made and kind of merge them with some other ones to make a little more complex ideas, and actually take some of those abstract concepts and make more concrete examples of what you can do with them for VFX and modeling work. As well as, of course, there will always be the odd ASMR short skit video as I have an idea or an urge to make one. That's it. That's going forward. But there is a tutorial. You might have seen that this is not just a thank you video. There is a bit of a tutorial. It's a longer video, and that's because we are going to be doing that. We are going to be taking one of my older tutorials, not too old, and doing a more advanced version of it. And that tutorial is one of my favorites. It is the image to geometry using geometry nodes tutorial. And what we are going to do with it is we are going to render out something like this, and you can just have kind of an animated collection of objects. That's pretty darn cool. And then you can even use shaders to give it a little more of an animated or kind of stylized quality. And yeah, that's it. So that's the tutorial. That's what we're going to be learning right now. And let's hop straight into Blender. All right, so here we are in Blender. I've got a new scene. I'm going to, of course, delete the default cube, but I'm going to keep the light and my good old camera for now. I'm just going to hit M to make a new collection. I'll name this like scene stuff. And then I'll hide that collection just for now. So now what we're going to do is we are going to insert an image as plane. Images as plane. If you don't see this, it is an add-on for Blender. So up in your edit and then preferences, images as planes, import export images as planes. It's right there. I believe it's a Blender add-on. It's native in Blender. I don't remember if it's on by default. If it's not, it should already be included. Just find that in the edit menu and then go ahead and check yes. Because what this is going to allow us to do is just import our footage as a plane already, which is very nice. So we're going to go, I'm going to navigate to our have it. Where do I have it? This is my matte. And so what I basically did, let me import this so we can see, and then I'll go to material preview mode. And there we are. So this is the way we're going to view it. If I hit play, there we go. We can see it's playing back. It's the sequence. And what I've essentially done is I've created a matte. Again, this comes from that image to 3D geometry tutorial. This is again just kind of reiterating what that video is about, and then we're going to add a couple more things and mess around with some materials. But that is based on this concept of a matte as well. And M-A-T-T-E, not if you have a friend Matt, don't make them, don't do this to them unless, of course, you have their consent. Then I guess turn them into a bunch of cubes, which is what we're about to do. But either way, right now this should be coming up how I did this. The easiest way to do this, of course, is just in front of a green or blue screen and then keying yourself out. Blender has a keying feature. You can key stuff out in Blender. If I'm keying, though, I prefer to do that in Premiere or After Effects. DaVinci Resolve also has a pretty good keying feature if you like node-based systems. Either way, I didn't do that. I just had my background, but I was wearing bright clothing. Again, this yellow sweater that contrasts the background. And so I just rotoscoped myself out. And I might do a tutorial at some point on rotoscoping. I Don't mind rotoscoping, especially as I'm using here, After Effects' Roto tool, which is AI and everything. My computer can handle it pretty well. And no matter what you do, it's going to take time. That's just how rotoing works, unless you use, there's a couple online tools, but those are paid. And I know After Effects is paid, but I don't want to pay for another thing when I already have After Effects. You'll see me in here, I kind of make keyframes for every second of the footage. A better way to do that is every half a second, but again, for some reason, I'm lazy in that sense, so then I'll go back and I'll clean it up, which then takes longer. But either way, I'm not looking for a super clean matte. I just kind of want the general shape. I don't really care about motion blur or decontaminating the colors because, again, I'm using this to make a matte. I'm not actually going to put this with all of its color in front of another footage. But yeah, biggest thing for rotoing out yourself or someone else, get good footage to start. You can also see I'm not moving a ton. The biggest things are the gaps in my arms, but I'm not moving a lot, so there's not a lot of motion blur to begin with. That's pretty much it. So now we'll come back into Blender where I've got this matte. To get this kind of look right here is I just use the fill effect and then drop that in my matte footage. I duplicated it first because I also want a color version of this rotoscoped out, which we'll use later. But I basically just filled it in with the paint bucket kind of in After Effects and then exported it as a QuickTime with no alpha because I actually want this black border for now. Either way, we've got this imported now. So first things first, I'm going to press S to scale this up, and then I'm going to hit 5 to scale it up by 5, and then I'm going to apply that scale. If you end up rotating this at all, don't apply the rotation because that can mess it up. We just want to apply a scale because that's all we need. That will mess up the geometry nodes if it's not applied, if the scale's not applied, but don't apply any rotation or anything else. Either way, there we go. And last thing also for setting ourselves up, playback, you can see it stops early and also it's a little sluggish as it's slower than it should be. And that reason is because it is playing at 24 FPS, which is Blender's default. I actually recorded this at 29.97. I just know that's what my camera records at, and I've done this enough that I have that number off the top of my head. So there we go. That's a little smoother. I'm not quite swimming through molasses anymore. But we also want to stop this. Now, I could scrub through and find the point where it stops, which is pretty easy. Or I can drag this up and go to my shader editor and then just look. This is why we import images as planes, because it sets up our texture already. And if I just look here, I can see there's 203 frames in this video. And so if I go to 203, 204, 203, 204, onward are the same. So I'm just going to type 203 down in my endpoint. And there we go. Now it should just loop seamlessly with no pauses. Once it gets to the end right there, we're going to see that happen, and there we go. Like the other options on here, it's auto refreshing, which is what you want. If you have an image sequence when you import it as a plane, there should be a box that says animate image sequences. Make sure you do that. But then your frames might not be down here, so you'll have to input how many frames you have in the start frame and everything. If it's not working for some reason, and you can also do cyclic. Make sure auto refresh is checked because that's what lets it play, and cyclic will just repeat it throughout your timeline. But I only need it to play once, and I've got it set to my scene frames. So now we get to do the fun thing and what this tutorial really is, which is geometry nodes. Again, this is going to be a reiteration of that kind of 2D image to 3D geometry tutorial, at least in the beginning. So I'm going to kind of speed through it. If you haven't seen that video, I recommend going watch it. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy that tutorial. But now we're going to move on to this. So first things first, I'm going to save. So Control S, it'll pop up. Let's do video geometry tutorial. If I can spell, subscribe for more. That's always a good way to name things. That will help me find it later. And if you want to find more videos like this, you can just follow those instructions that were right there. Subscribe for more. Either way, I'm also going to now duplicate this by Shift D and just right click. I'm going to hide my original. I just like keeping an original around just in case. Geometry nodes are procedural and we're not going to apply this, so it's fully procedural. But I just like keeping that. just so I can easily switch between them. And if I want to try something new without like deleting or messing with my original geometry node, I can do that and I don't have to re-import everything. Either way, now I'm going to add another window. I'm just going to drag this over because I'll use the shader one later, so no reason to close it. And I'll switch over to my geometry node editor. And with my copy of that image, that plane, which is up here labeled as subject mat 2.001, I'm going to hit new, and we'll have a new geometry node. So this controls the geometry. If it's not connected, there's nothing. So now I'm just going to kind of speed through again that the tutorial I keep mentioning, because that's what this is all based on. So to start, I'm going to distribute some points along this face, distribute points on faces. I'm also going to get a join geometry node right at the end there. And we're going to put that in just so I can kind of see what we're doing and what it should end up looking like. And later, of course, we're going to try to match the scale and everything. So this is really helpful right there. And now I'm going to instance on points. Instance on points right there. But we have nothing to instance. I'm going to use a cube. I like the cube. That's what's in my intro and everything. It's just real simple. I like the look of it. Spheres also look kind of cool, and so do icospheres. And of course, we'll get into a little bit later at the end of this, using your own models of geometry and kind of what you can do with it. But there we go. We got a whole bunch of cubes, but they're way too big. And just like before, we're going to use the image itself, that mat, to control the scale. So if I go and get an image texture node, if I'll click it, there we go. I'm going to open, actually don't even need to open because we already have this imported in our scene. If I do the drop down menu, subject mat 2, there it is. I can drag this color right into that scale. And there we go. But again, this is set to repeat, so we really have a couple images here. If I set it to clip, you can see, there we go. We've only got one. But again, these are way too big. So just to give myself a little clarity, I'm going to get a color ramp, put that in the middle right there. And now this is controlling black. Again, this is a binary system. This is the same thing as if you use a color ramp or anything for the shader editor for like roughness. 0 is black, and that is in the shader is 100% shiny, no roughness. And then 1 or white is saying yes, or in the shader editor, maybe like 100% roughness, totally rough. And here it's just saying no geometry in the black, yes geometry in the white. But these are still large, so I'm going to click that white right there, click the color, and then change that down. The closer you get to black, the closer you get to 0, and the smaller it is. You can see that number right there. So I'm just going to do something like that. I'm also going to up my density to, let's start with 100. That's still not quite enough. I think 1,000 is usually pretty good. There we go. Now we get a little more semblance of the shape of this. So now we get to actually control and try to scale this up. So I'm going to get a capture attribute node. We're going to, if I can click it, there we go. Input that. We're going to get a position input as well. We're going to switch this to vector, put in the position. There we go. And now we're going to get a separate XYZ, plug that in, and we're going to get a combine XYZ, and we're going to plug that in, which will be weird because it's saying 0, so that all disappeared. But we'll plug all these points in just because. There we go. And now we have it all up in the little corner there. So that's fun. But we want to control that. And how do we control that? But with math, vector math. So we're going to input a vector math node, and we're going to do that right on the x-axis. And that's going to give us left to right, as you can see. So we'll line that up. 1.5 is usually a good place to start, I find, just from how much I've experimented with this. And then we'll also Shift D that. Shift D it. And we'll change this to multiply. And that now it's going to allow us to scale it up. Perfect. And now we're going to replicate the same thing, but for, I believe, the y-axis on how this is rotated. So if I hit 0, and now this will, yep, y-axis, allow us to go up and down. And if I Shift D this multiply, 0 out that x, and now I can control the y. So we're going to kind of scale this up. First thing, I find the best way to do this is by first lining up the bottom. We're going to scale it to how wide I am, and then scoot it over. You can see it's not quite lining up, and that is because actually on frame 48, but this image is of frame 1. So I'm going to scoot that all the way back to the beginning. And there we go. That lines up a little bit better. I think that might be pretty darn good. But there we go. So we've basically done that first bit, that whole first bit of the tutorial right there. Again, we have these math nodes that are controlling the position and scale of this image texture, which is saying yes and no to where we want our geometry. And now I'm just going to get rid of that background by just going straight from my instance on points to the geometry output. But first things first, let's actually finish this. So we're actually going to get, again, the color to drive how this looks. So I'm just going to copy this image texture node, go right down there. I'm going to scoot this end bit all the way over. And now we're going to, again, grab a separate XYZ, plug that in there, and a combine XYZ, plug that in right there. So now it's only scaling the X, but we're going to keep all these. There we go. And now we're actually going to, we want to scale, you can see, if we get rid of that Z, we look at it from this angle, look at that, that's what we want. We want it to kind of come out of the camera, be 3D. So that means we're going to have this image texture down here. This is going to control that Z-axis. And nothing, it gave us a real funny, because this is saying, this is the matte again, and this is saying that white is, again, 1, or multiplying, it's just saying, yeah, there's a lot. It's scaled up to 1, and then black is saying 0 again. The reason why it's all funky like this is because we need to take this vector again and plug that back in down here. And there we go. Now it's scaled, but because our matte is all white, it's scaling everything by 1 on the Z-axis. So we're going to change that. Again, I have, this is my subject matte. This is the matte, the mask I made, and this is the color version without that fill in After Effects. And if I apply that, look at that. If I deselect, and if I go into my render mode, I don't have any light set up. So let's quickly set up an HDRI and maybe that other light. So if I go to the world, I hit go color here, and then I go to environment texture. It's going to be pink, which is not what I want. So I'm going to open, go to my HDRI folder, and I have one of my office. There we are. I'm thinking, speaking of like future tutorials, I'm probably going to come out with one. I've been thinking of one for a while on how to do HDRIs, specifically with the 360 camera. Because when I was learning how to do them and trying to figure it out, there were no real good like concise tutorials, and there's a lot of like gobbledygook, but they're pretty darn simple and pretty straightforward. So that might be another one to look out for, especially if people are kind of want that. Either way, you can see here we have a fun representation of me. Let me turn off that background so you don't see my office. But there we go with some lighting. And even if I bring back my camera and light, when I was filming this segment, there was another light just off this way a little bit. And we're going to reset my camera. So I'm going to hit Alt-R and Alt-G to reset the rotation on that. And then I'm going to RX 90. And then I'll also RZ 90 as well. And then I'll just G1 or GX to move it back. And I'll take a look. And I'll hit N to open my menu. And I'll go to View. And I'll do Camera to View. And then I'll zoom out. And this is why I also like having this one back in, because now I can really line up that scale. There we go. That's pretty darn good. I could maybe going a little bit further. I could do math to figure out this more exactly, but I don't want to do that. I'm all about eyeballing things. Eyeballing things is great. There we go. And I'll turn off camera view. Perfect. So that is it. Let me change the color of this now. So that's the basic of it. So that you're thinking, George, that's just what you did for the image tutorial. I mean, you just basically repeated yourself. And yeah, I did, of course. This is a little more complex. Like, I mean, this is a person, so at least that's something. It's not, Mario or Luigi or Sonic. It's Mario. It's none of them Plumber Brothers or the Fast Hedgehog. But what I am going to do is now we get to animate it. Except we don't do anything. Blender does all the work. And luckily, Blender has this nifty node that is, if we hit time, it's called scene time. And if you've been looking at these image texture nodes, you'll see that they have this lovely thing down here that says frame. So we can change that, and there we go, animating. But nothing changed in this one because this one wasn't animating. So how do we fix that? Well, easy. We take this thing that says frame, we plug it in there, and we plug it in there. And that's it. Now I'm going to save. And if I hit play, I'll get out of my render view for a second, just so it can play. There we go. Look at it. It's animating. You can see like there's depth, there's texture, because the color is constantly shifting. And of course, bits of you are lighter and darker than other bits. So we actually get the look of a 3D image, a 3D texture, especially with some light there to provide some shadow. That's really cool. And I'll even go ahead and I'll change this texture. So right now this will just be using the default texture. I'll change that to, I like the yellow. We'll go to like kind of that yellow. Nothing's changing up here because we haven't set a material. So what we're going to do is next, the last bit again, is we're going to get a set material node, put that there, and we'll select our material. But we're also going to actually realize instances before this, just so that we'll be able to do some individual stuff later. But that's it. That's if you want to do that solid color right there. And I can even go ahead and change this. I like it to be kind of rough. You can also make it really shiny if you want to make it like it's metal. Like we could go metallic. Oh, look at that. Gold. Gold! That's gold. And I am keeping this in Eevee. That's actually really, look at that. Gold man. I'm keeping this in Eevee. You can export if you want, like if you really want to integrate it into your scene, you can, of course. Eevee's pretty good with that, but of course you can export if you want some more subsurface scattering or stuff like that. You could export with cycles. Or you could even, but with Eevee, the nice thing too, if you really, really wanted to, is you can do an emission node. Let's do that same color up there, and you can just make it emissive. And it's gonna lose a lot of the depth of it, but then you can have some bright color like glowy man, glowy person, glowing object in the middle there. But we'll keep this as metallic. I'll actually make it a little shiny then. Look at that. Oh, look how shiny, like a coin, a whole bunch of coins. And that is the thing you can do with this, which we'll kind of get in. We're about to start getting into some of the more complex things. You can make a man, you can make a person, you can make like a dog or a cat that is made out of coins. If you just want to model some coins and then instance them in your object, you could have a whole bunch of coins. You could do things like a candy monster. You could do like a whole bunch of weird bugs or something if you want like for like Halloween. I know that's a while away, but you know, they'd be creepy. But that's it. So that's for a single texture. But let's do that kind of cool cartoony thing. I mean, this is pretty cartoony and funky as it is, but let's do that little extra step. So what we're going to do then is we've realized instances and we've set our material. But between there, we want to put another capture attribute. And then we want to get an index node. Not a material index, get out of here. We want an index. Index. There we go. We'll plug that in. And then we'll plug this attribute all the way to this group output. So attribute to that little circle. Now we have an attribute. So now if we go over and to our geometry nodes and import output attributes, we'll name this one something like color. You can name it what you want. But if you, for some reason, are having multiple of these, name them multiple different things. And now, if we go here into our shader and we hit Shift A, and we get an attribute node, we'll just type in the name, make sure caps and everything matches so we have color. And then I will get a math node. and a white noise. There we go. And now we're going to take this vector value, put that in the top there, value to vector, and then we can output this color to the base color. And that's going to give us a whole bunch of, going to have this pretty shiny, fun things right there. Look at that. That's still not quite what we want. Is it? Nope, not at all. So we're going to go to snap again. My favorite thing. If you haven't seen my video on never count verts again to find out how to snap all these boys. I mean, I love the snap node. That was a fun one. That was math I actually like doing. We can go to 8 and we can get some random colors, and that's pretty darn cool. But that's not what we want, is it? No. I mean, I like random colors, and that's actually because the value is changing. We actually get a cool kind of like abstract art looking thing. But I want the image to control these colors. So basically like the shading and everything is apparent. So instead of this index node right here, we're going to get rid of that, boo. And we're going to use, oh my God, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, we're going to use this color. We're going to use that color node right there. So we're going to take that color and put it right there. And now, nothing's changed. And that is because we don't want the vector anymore. We don't want the vector. We want the value of all these. We don't want the individual origin of each of these instances. We want the color. Color to value. Oh my God. So many values. It's hurting my eyes. And that is because we don't want that vector. Now it's going to fix itself. And we don't want 8. 8's too big. We want to go down to like 0.1 is a good one. And look at that. Look at that. We got like Andy Warhol right there. That's Marilyn Monroe. Maybe not as good as Marilyn Monroe. It's a Campbell's soup can right there. And now I want to control these colors. So you can see it's giving us 3. And if I mess around with these, you can get some more funky, weird ones, a little more variation. Let's try 0.05. 0.05, look at that. I like the 3, so I'm going to stick with 0.1. And I'm going to input, as per usual, a color ramp right there. And now this will give us a black and white and the gradient in there. You can also, if you really want it to like cut off, you could switch this to constant, which will give you another cool look. This is give us some white. And that will give you really harsh kind of shadows, which is actually a pretty cool look. I mean, look at that. But I'll keep it at my linear. And I'll add another one in the middle, just so I can kind of control some of those colors. And let's do, I don't know. I'm just thinking something cool. So that's like the highlights right there. So we'll do something like, we'll do a bright kind of yellow. Yeah. And then these are kind of the midtones. So we'll do like kind of reddish orange. I don't like that, so we're going to make this more of a white. Look at that. And then for, yes, we'll just make that a kind of a darker purple. That's that's very interesting. But there we go. That is, so again, the lightest parts, the midtones, and then the shadows are the darkest parts. And there we go. That is the basics of how to use that. Again, the only main difference is adding that image, this frame value, this scene time into the frame to let this be animated. If you apply this geometry node, by the way, that will stop. So this one is truly procedural. If you want to do physics or anything with it, make sure you know what frame you want to start the physics or stop the physics or anything like that, so that way you can get into it or out of it. But the last thing we're going to do is we're just going to kind of mess around with actually instancing some objects here, because I like the cubes, but they're a little rough for me. I like the softer cube, which is just a cube with rounded corners. So I'm going to quickly hide this boy, and we're going to Shift A, and we're going to insert a cube, and then I'm just going to modify, or I'm just going to bevel. I'll give that like 5. maybe not even that many. We'll do 3 because it's gonna be real small. We'll shade smooth. And then I like that, so I'll just apply that. And now I'm gonna hide that from the render and even hide that in general. Bring back my subject, click it, because in this geometry node editor, I'm gonna take, instead of this cube right here as my instance, I'm going to Shift A, Object Info, and we're going to select our cube. And there we go. Now, that scale's a lot bigger than that cube, than the original cube. The original cube is a 1x1 meter. This cube that Blender that you spawn in like the 3D workspace is a 2x2. So even if I go S.5, it's gonna fix itself. And then I have to hit A and scale. There we go. It fixed itself. So you could either do that in your modeling, or you could do that again just by controlling this value right here on that image texture node. And yeah, so that's it. We got a shiny metal man with some funky stuff on his face, and that's it. And we can even again play this back a little bit. But again, kind of what I was saying before, the last thing we'll end on is, oh, look at that. Look at him move. Is what if you want to do something like a whole bunch of objects or something like coins. Let's actually do that. Let's grab a cylinder, and we're going to scale that along the z-axis to get that real thin. Let's call that a coin. All right, that's a coin right there. That's a coin. If I've ever seen one, that's a coin. But again, we'll apply that scale, and I'll even let's name this coin, and then we'll go here, and we'll choose my coin from that object. Coin, and we'll hide that. But you see, it's controlling that single axis. So this is something that's slightly different than we're used to. But there's a couple of things we can do. First of all, we can change this rotation. So we can take this rotation and plug it in there. I'm not going to do much, but if we Shift A and we get a Euler, align normals to Euler. Euler. Anyway, there it is. That's going to give us a little more variation in the rotation. Let's do this along the z-axis if we can. And I'm just messing around. Let's actually make this 500. Save my computer even a little bit more. You can make this 100 maybe. Yeah, I'll make them real. We can take a look in a book. Reading Rainbow. There we go. I like that Y. Look at that. Look how funky that is. And we can also change the normal. Plug that in there. There we go. Look at that. The normal is a little bit better for that. Look at that. And the Z's gonna be that way. Yeah, the Z's not gonna change it much. But let's go with Y. And this is where you can maybe do 2 of these. You can duplicate this and then do one from the X. If you wanted to not have stuff like clip into each other, you could change this from like random to Poisson distribution. Look, it's a man made out of maybe coins, maybe not. But again, you can put a lot more detail on these. You could have multiple. If you're doing coins, maybe you don't want it to scale along the X or the Y, and you just want the image to be there. But yeah, so that is how to make, I'll let this play out. That is how to make this kind of cool animation, again, like 2D image to 3D geometry. This could be really useful if you kind of want a creature or something that's made out of an object, but don't have the time to 3D model or animate something, or like motion capture something, or don't have the means to do that. This is a really quick way to get a very similar effect, and you can do a lot with this. Like, again, it's procedural. You can add more nodes to this. You can add more objects. You do a couple of these on top of each other, like I said. You can add physics before or after the animation starts playing for like a build-up sequence or like a destroyed. Like maybe this guy gets hit and the coins go flying everywhere, so I figure out where he's gonna stop and then the coins go. So that's been this tutorial. Again, I want to say thank you for 100 and now even more subscribers. That's it. I've been George. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you've learned something. I hope you make something pretty gosh darn cool with it. If you like the video and if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do that. It really helps me out, like I said. And thank you again so much. I hope you've enjoyed this, as I've said for like the 5th time, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.